Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today we have a series of panelists and then we're going to address a highlight topic on Latin America. But before we do that, we're going to talk about a little bit overview of woman identity in general and how you can participate. And then we move to the webinar sections. So first of all right, some housekeeping items. So everybody will be on mute except the presenters. You will not be on video today. Please raise your hand to ask the questions, and we can unmute you. Or you can text in your questions. Please identify yourself when you speak, so we know who you are. And just let you know, the webinar is being recorded today, and will be make it available on our YouTube channels. After the webinar, we'll send you um, a survey. Please take advantage of it and provide your feedback. So about us, who we are. So we are formally very young organizations. We were formally registered just a little bit over a year ago. We are no profit and led and organized entirely by volunteers. We so far have over 1,100 members across the world, and it's growing every day. And we have 18 ambassadors. And that ambassador list is also growing every day, thanks to the volunteer participations. And across our social media platform, we have over 4,500 followers. So our mission is to inspire and elevate to support a more diverse workforce in the digital identity industry. It's all about diversity and inclusions. And so that the digital identity solution is built for everyone by everyone. And that's very important. So one way that we support our members and drive this diversity agenda is to organize series of webinars. And you can find our prior webinar that we have done on our YouTube channel, Woman Identity. Subscribe and look at some of these videos we have done. Some of the webinars are actually very, very interesting. All right. So to follow us, these are the hashtag. You can use it to follow us. We normally use these when we do some social media post. And next step, what you can do is to become a member, so it can be seen, be heard, be supportive, and be catalyst of change. But so yes, the volunteers are great, the members are great, but without our sponsor, we wouldn't be able to do all this great work together. So I would like to thank all the sponsors that help build up woman identity, and without their financial support, things will be a little bit more difficult to make things happen. So thank you for our sponsors. So today event, we have a STEAM panel. We're super excited. We have been doing prep call with the ladies, and we were saying that how the different topics come together. So we're super excited to do this panel discussion for you. Spotlight on Latin America, on different identity project between the lesson takeaway, the lessons learned, the challenges, and the new challenges that we have to face. So on the panel, we have Stefania Calderon. She is international consultant from Ideas for All. We have Rebecca Omena Penaloza. She is the program coordinator from OAS. And then Marianne Diaz Hernandez. She's founder of Access Libre. And we're going to talk about a series of different identity projects happening in Latin America. Super exciting, interesting. So without further ado, I'm going to start launching the next to the webinar sections. Stefania, you're up. Please introduce yourself and let me know when I need to move the slide, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much, Teresa. And good morning or good afternoon to everybody that is joining us to this webinar. So let me introduce myself very quickly. I am Stefania Calderon, or Stephanie in Spanish. Originally, I'm from Ecuador, but currently I'm living in Washington, D.C. For the last 10 years, I have been working as a project manager and as a technical advisor on topics related with civil registry, identity management, social inclusion, and lately migration. and on projects that have been implemented in different Latin American and Caribbean countries. This has given me the opportunity to understand how the civil registries and identity offices work on the field, which has been their main achievements and also their main challenges. Currently, as Teresa already mentioned, I am an international consultant, and I am collaborated with different partners, international organizations and local organizations as a technical advisor, project coordinator, and researcher. So that being said, I would like to share with all of you a little bit of like a background on what does legal identity means in Latin American and Caribbean countries. Well, in the region, the birth certificate is considered as the reader document, which means that is the main document that proves identity, someone's identity. In the last 10 years, the region has done an outstanding effort to provide legal identity for all. In 2010, it was estimated that more than 10 million of children under 5-year-old didn't have a way to prove their identity, which ended in creating more barriers on accessing to health services, enrolling on schools, accessing to financial services, and so many other challenges. As most of you may know, without an identity, basically you don't exist. In these 10 years, the region has been able to register more than 6 million of children, which has been an amazing result. But how do they have done this? Mainly by putting in place 3 strategies. One of them is targeting vulnerable population that are living in rural areas, in indigenous communities, in border areas, basically population that have a lot of problems to access to identification services. Also by improving the coverage of their services. Before COVID, and I want to be this clear because COVID has changed a lot on how countries are providing legal identification services. But before COVID, all the countries had offices and hospitals in order to provide birth certificates for newborns before they go back home. Also, they have put in place mobile offices, which basically it's that they move from the main city to small cities or rural areas in order to register children and also provide legal documents, legal identity documents to vulnerable population. The third strategy has been related with interinstitutional coordination, which has been particularly important not only to improve the coverage of the services, but also for a better use of resources. If we can move to the next slide. So how do identity systems work in Latin America? First of all, I only want to talk about Latin American countries because Caribbean countries, they don't have an identity system. Currently, more than half of Latin American countries include a unique identification number on their birth certificates, which later is going to be used for any transaction. What happens in the region is that birth certificates are the requirement to obtain a national identification card. With the exception of Brazil and Mexico, all Latin American countries issue a unique national identification card that is managed by the central government. That being said, the identification systems are centralized in Latin America. Nowadays, the technology involved on the issuance of ID cards varies from country to country. Some ID cards include chips on their documents, other digital signatures, other are printed in plastic or paper-based solutions. But what is common in all the countries is that all the countries are gathering biometrics information because it's one of the requirements to access to a legal identity document. All the countries right now are gathering the 10 fingerprints of the population, and some of them now are also collecting facial recognition biometrics. For most of you right now, this will be very surprising because it's not common in other regions that governments are gathering and saving all this biometric information. What has happened in Latin America countries is that the collection of biometrics is extremely common, and it is related with this feeling of security and belonging. There is this idea on population that the more information they ask about me, the safer the procedure or the transaction will be, which now is leading to future issues, like, for example, how personal data is being managed. However, the need to have a secure and private and functional ID system has been demanded by several governments and also by their citizens. Some of them have been modernizing their system, digitalizing the procedure, providing verification services between agencies, creating online services between others. For the last 5 years, the region has supported several digital identification system initiatives. And now we have that has shown some results, like, for example, cash transfer programs are more accessible, they can target more vulnerable population, and the resources of the government are being used in a better way. However, some other countries, there is still a lot of work to do. As I mentioned before, 3 million of children don't have access to any form of identification. And with COVID, this number could increase, because a lot of civil registration and identification offices have suspended their services temporarily. And until now, we don't know how is going to be the impact on accessing to a legal identity. So another challenge is that some other countries are still working on paper-based programs that is leading to a lot of bureaucracy, disappearance of files, and even identity theft and corruption. The third challenge, and is not a minor challenge, is related with migrants. For the last year, the region has been facing a migration crisis, where people are particularly affected if they cannot prove their legal identity. Sometimes their national identification card is not valid to prove their identity on cities that now they are living. And obtaining a birth certificate from their consulates could be challenging if the home country don't have a digitalized system. And finally, one of the last challenges that I have been seeing lately is related with the use and protection of personal data. As we know, technology right now is offering a variety of products, but it is necessary that governments, entities, and also citizens can ask themselves about the adequate use of technology and how this personal information is being used. But also, it is important to start creating user-centered solutions. Why is that? Even though that the region has done a lot of progress in providing a legal identity to all, now we have to think on solutions that can work for everybody, specifically on a region that is diverse, that we have a lot of communities and a diverse vulnerable population, and where the internet is still not accessible for everybody. So thank you, Teresa. If somebody has a question, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Stefania. So we will move on to the next speaker, and then after all the speaker, then we'll start doing the Q&A, and then the attendee can participate. So next up is Rebecca.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm very pleased to be here with Stefania and Marianne. So as My name is Rebecca Omaña. It's a difficult name to pronounce with an ñ, Teresa, but thank you for trying. I'm Venezuelan, but I live in Washington, D.C. I am the coordinator of the Universal Civil Identity Program in the Americas at the Organization of American States. I have been coordinating the program for the past 5 years. And before that, I was a project manager for identity projects in Central America and the English-speaking Caribbean. The rest of my experience in almost 15 years at the OES includes electoral observation and a lot of training of observers and working with electoral authorities to modernize electoral systems. So I went from elections to civil identity, and this is important because if you can just move to my first slide, I will talk about how the work of the OES in civil identity started, and it have an electoral background. But first, I just wanted to say for people that maybe will not know the Organization of American States, that we are a regional international organization, and the OES have 34 members, all the countries in Latin America in the English and French speaking Caribbean, plus Canada and the United States. So basically all independent countries in the Western Hemisphere are part of the Organization of American States. And as an organization, we work in 4 pillars. There are democracy, human rights, security, and development. So all the projects that we do related to civil identity are under the umbrella of the democracy and human rights pillars. And this is important because for us, civil identity opens, obviously, the door to exercise rights and to get protections from the state and to participate in strengthening the democratic system. So we started working in civil identity 15 years ago. And 2005, you can see it there, and maybe if you can press. The first project that we implemented as an organization was the Haitian National Identification Card. So before that time, before 2005, every time that Haiti will have an election, they have to create an election roll and a voters list from scratch. So in 2005, with huge financial support from the Canadian government, we helped the government of Haiti to create the Office of National Identification, to create a database with identification information of adults for the purpose of voting. It was in the beginning for the purpose of voting. But that database evolved. It's still there 15 years later. And now the SIM card, the National Identification Card, is used in Haiti for all kinds of transactions, for identification purposes, to open a bank account. So it went from an electoral point of view to a civil identification point of view. So after that, in 2008, the OES member states created the program that PUICA, in Spanish, the Universal Civil Identity Program in the Americas. And as I said, we are an international organization, so we need a mandate from our member states to do everything or to do anything. And the member state gave us the mandate to work in identification, in identity, and it's a very broad mandate. So it's to work in civil registration, identification, vital statistics, but always thinking that we have to support member states in the efforts to provide civil identity, civil to all. So from 2008, when the program was established, to kind of 2016, we work in several issues because the region, as Estefania was saying, is very diverse. And we have huge countries with very modern systems. And we have other countries where we still are doing things on paper. So we work in a, 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 a huge range of projects, always depending on what the member states ask from us. But if you can press again, what we focus in these 8 years was basically working in birth registration. At the time, the countries were trying to get to universal registration by 2015. That was changed, and now the goal is to achieve it in 2030. But in 2008, we were still working on that. So birth registration was a huge, important thing, and there were many tools to work on that. What Estefania mentioned before, hospital registration, expansion of services in border crossing areas, in rural communities. There was a lot of effort and funding put into that. The other thing that we worked a lot in was awareness. Awareness for civil society, awareness for citizens about the importance of registration and identification, because there was not, in many countries, there was not a real culture of registration. And I think that was related to non-understanding why registration is needed to get services, right? So that was a huge component, and we work in modernization of procedures, to simplify procedures, to make it easier for citizens to get access to civil identity documents. Next. So we went from one country in 2005 to 19 countries in 2016, and it's important to say that even though in the map it's very small, we work in many Caribbean countries that have different projects to Latin America, but it still needed a lot of help in modernizing some of their systems. So the region have done a great, as Estefania said, a great work in improving registration services. And we are down to a rate of under registration of children under 5 years of age that is 5 or 6%. It's changed a little bit, but that is a huge success, I think, for the region. But there is still things that we need to do. Something that the OES didn't do was working in digital identity. And this is because that working in digital identity, it's a very expensive thing to do. And you need a lot of investment to build a good system, right? And the OES didn't have that kind of funding to help build those systems. So what we concentrate in was working in the foundation system, the foundational systems for digital identity. So we work with very targeted projects in the countries that requested our help. And it was in the last 5 years, and I have 2021 because I'm optimistic that we will be still here doing things. What we have been trying is to expand access to civil identity. So we are working with some specific vulnerable populations. We have displaced people still in some countries, as Colombia, that is out of a conflict that was there for 40 years, but you still have displaced people. So, and they need identification documents to get access to post-conflict services and funding. We have been working very hard with people living in border areas to provide identity to those people. And this is very important because we are in Latin America. We are in a corridor of migration to the United States. And we have many many borders where crossing is like a daily activity. So we have been focused in people living in border areas, and the big focus in the last maybe 2 years has been in providing identity documents to trans persons. So understanding that gender identity is a challenge in the region, but that the countries are open to work to provide documents that show the self-perceived gender identity of trans persons. We have been working too in supporting technical changes between authorities in the region. And that is interesting because 10 years ago, we have meetings where we will talk about best practices or successful practices, and that was kind of it. We have a lot of meetings, and we were sharing and sharing and sharing. And at some point, the countries were like, okay, I want to go and see it in action. So when I see it, I can use it in my country. So we have been working very hard in doing that, in helping countries, technical personnel to go from one country to another, to have these technical visits and to get information about very specific practices and how they can be implemented in other areas of Latin America. And finally, we have been supporting countries in building responses to regional challenges from our own region. So it has been things like interoperability and how to verify information across countries. So how, even though they are not going to share information, how they can verify that a person is who that person says that it is, right? So we have been not giving them the solutions, providing the space for the countries to discuss how they can verify information. And in our last meeting, just like 3 weeks ago, we were talking about the problem that exists when you have to have an apostille in documents, in foreign documents. So that is something that is new, and they decided, the countries in the region decided that they want to work on that. So what we are going to provide is the space for that kind of discussion. I think we have challenges there, but maybe we will go back to challenges after Teresa. I don't know. Yes? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, so in that case,
I'm like noting question already. I have
okay.
tons of
So
question for you guys. So.
in that case, I will stop there, and I can talk about some of the challenges that we have after Marianne speaks. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Rebecca. So, sorry, is this this? Well, I will come back to this challenge when we talk about challenge section. Yes. All right, Marianne, you're next.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored and humbled to be alongside these amazing women. All of these amazing women, you inspire me. I'm Marianne Diaz Hernandez, but nobody says that way. So you can call me Marianne. Everyone calls me Marianne. I'm from Venezuela as well. I'm living in Santiago de Chile since 2017, I think. I don't know what is time anymore. And I'm, as Teresa said, I founded the Venezuelan NGO Acceso Libre, where I have been working for the past, I think, 12 years or so in the intersection between human rights and technology. And I now work for the organization, the regional organization, Derechos Digitales, which focuses on these issues, human rights issues in technology across the region. So my work has been mostly focused first on freedom of speech and censorship and internet censorship, mostly. But I have been working a lot in the past 4 or 5 years in biometric systems, particularly coming from the biometric system in Venezuela. And from that, on the right to privacy and identity and bodily integrity and dignity, which is what my work focuses on mostly now. And so I want to go to the very specific, because my girls there gave such a great overview of the region, and I have mostly worked on Venezuela and on Chile, which are two case studies, like very different case studies regarding digital identity. So I started working on Venezuela, where we have no data protection standards at all. Like we don't have a data protection law of any kind. And we have no recognition of trans identities. The state doesn't recognize trans identities, or the ability to change gender, only to change name. We have a biometric system that started as an electronic voting system, like the fingerprint scanners started first, integrated to the electronic voting systems, and then also started being used as integrated, as the picture shows, in supermarkets and grocery stores and pharmacies. And then they just broke and stopped being used. But the thing there is that they garnered a very strong link in people's minds regarding what means to buy food and what means to be able to vote. And so once that connection is there, it's really hard to take it out in a context that is very polarized and very controlling. And then, after the biometric system for food security was installed, we come to what happens in the past 3 years, 4 years or so, which is the homeland card, the Carnet de la Patria, which is a way of trying to replace our national ID card everyone has, by using this ID card that's way more politicized and kind of harder to get, but also that gathers way more information. You have to answer so many questions, including if you have a pet, if you have ever broken a bone, if you are part of any welfare system in the country. And that's a long story. But what happens there, and what is happening now, is that after all of these make this beautiful cocktail of political control and social control, we enter a national ID crisis. And it started with the migration crisis. We immigrants have it very hard to get documents once they expire. I myself don't have a passport, and my best chance to get a passport is to wait 3 years to get a Chilean citizenship and to get a Chilean passport, because it's almost impossible to get a new passport once it's all over. And then what happens when you get denied of your identity, your ability to identify um, inside or outside of the country, is that you get denied other rights. And for instance, as a migrant, like I've had it very easy, but other people are unable to legalize their situation as a migrant, because they can't get their documents in order, be it a national identities card, be it a passport, be it their university degree, which also I can't get my university degree out from Venezuela. So it's also a beautiful mess that when mixed with political persecution becomes a tool for control, to persecute people even abroad, even when they have already left the country. And inside of Venezuela, it's being used as a way to control resources. As you know, we have a poverty crisis and a very high risk of famine. I think we are the fourth country in risk of famine in the whole world right now. And of course, the COVID crisis has just pushed everything further. And so people who are, I'm still in Venezuela, people who are at risk already, like I'm talking about, yes, trans people, I'm talking about very poor people, but also I'm talking about women, because we have a very feminized poverty, women at risk, women who are suffering from violence, for instance. And then this is all pushed further. Like if you already, for instance, don't have good income, And this is aggravated by the fact that you cannot get a new ID, for instance. Then you can't get subsidized food, which is already really hard to get. And then everything becomes more expensive and more difficult. Now I'm going to Chile. Chile is an entirely different animal. Um, for starters, because it is a democratic country and it isn't in an economic crisis. Um, but Chile does recognize trans identities. This is very recent. It's just from last year, but it doesn't recognize non-binary identities. Like it's still trans people. It's only male or female. So for the queer population, this is a big thing. And we have a digital ID system, which is linked with a massive centralized database. When you go and scan your ID at any point where you need your ID to work, be it a it can be the doctor's office, it can be a governmental office, it can be a bank, it can be pretty much anywhere because they require this number even to buy gum at the corner stores. This is just so ingrained in society. Like it isn't necessary, but they ask it for like I don't know, for discount offers and whatnot. And so this is all linked with this massive centralized database. And while on the one hand, like hospitals and doctors and banks and all of that have access to certain information from the main government database. On the other hand, there is another massive database, which is what information the commerces have compiled from habits, but the shopping habits. If you give this information, this number, to get a discount, then that is being inserted into this massive database that is not safe at all. And this is also something that people think that it can be fixed just by educating people about not giving away their data, but someone who is impoverished needs that discount. And so this is just a way of exploiting people who are impoverished, because this is just exchanging basically money for your privacy. And what happened recently, which is something I want kind of focus a bit in, is that there is a database that's formed by this identity, the national identity, but also the password that you use to access a lot, like all of the government services, which we are talking 200 services or more, from the taxes to funding to identity system to marriage, all of it. And this database, which is massive and has 17 million people in it, all of us, was hacked. And it was all over the place. It was terabytes and terabytes of information. And we don't know yet, because the government isn't really transparent about this. We don't know yet what happened with that and how in risk we are. But the experts we have talked to said that the databases are not properly hashed, which means that there is a lot of information that can actually be accessed by someone who knows how to do it, if they don't load this enormous terabytes of information. And this is awful because there is a lot of that information that's very sensitive, and that's a lot of that information that cannot be changed. Like we use fingerprint scanning for everything here, for instance, and we don't know if that information is there because it is linked, and we don't know how it's being stored. And so I now want to go to the main takeaways of these two very different situations, but I think that they have things that can make us think a bit. First, that the denial of the difficulty to gain access to an identity card or passport is not only a denial of the right to identity, it is also a denial to the right of healthcare, to food, to housing, to education. I can't get a master's degree haven't been able to get a master's degree, even though I'm an expert in my field and I should have a master's degree, because my country stole my my university degree, and they won't give it to me. And so this is an impediment in people's lives, like in people's actual ordinary everyday lives. If someone doesn't have a Chilean ID, for instance, they have difficulty using the transportation systems. They have difficulty buying food. And even though these difficulties may be apparently easy, like, okay, you just don't give, you just tell them you are a foreigner and you don't have an ID. And then that becomes a situation. And that becomes something that is an attack on your dignity, because it can be a focus for xenophobia, for other experiences that you're not supposed to be going through. And the second thing is that identity is multiple and layered, which is something we have been talking about since the start of the conversation. So nobody really needs to know every single data point in every single transaction. Like, my bank doesn't need to know my address when I go to take money out of my account, you know? And yet we keep using these identity systems that are about sharing all of the information at every single transaction, like all of the information that is in my ID, because we can't really imagine how it would be otherwise. We have been talking for I don't know how many years in these conferences with tech people. They think entirely different, and they think that of identity systems are as puzzle pieces. Like, you can only share one puzzle piece, and that can be enough to confirm your identity. If what you need to know is that I am me, then that's all you need to know, and that puzzle piece can be enough. You don't need to know everything. And that's about how we design the system to work. And third is that identity is key for agency, particularly for women and for vulnerable populations. For someone to gain yes, agency about their lives, to gain the possibility to make choices, to take decisions about where they're going to go, where they're going to work, what they're going to study, if they're going to go to college or not, if they're going to open a bank account, if they can manage their own money. Like, for instance, for women who are in situations of violence, of situations of extreme poverty, or both, to be able to manage their own money depends on having these documents that allow them to act by themselves. And lastly, which is the one that particularly touches me personally, is that IDs can be the only way for a government to keep prosecuting or harassing someone even after they have left the country. And this is true for human rights workers that have had to leave Venezuela, and that can't really, uh, and also for non-human rights workers, like just for regular migrants, and that can't really shake Venezuela off their shoulders, because they have absolutely no choice but to keep going back to the Venezuelan government to beg for documents. And so this keeps coming after you, because this is not something you can change. Like of other things, like, I don't know, the right to food, you can change that by going to a different place. And it's very hard, it's very difficult, but you have agency in that. But the right to identity, people have very little agency in how that right is performed in actuality within the relationship with a particular government. And so those are the things I'd like to bring to the table. And I'm gonna shut up now. Thank you.
I'm still getting used to this interface quite a bit. Sorry, I'm getting a mute. I have a delay for me getting a mute. I apologize. Thank you, Marianne. And no, we don't want you to shut up, because we're gonna have you keep talking and sharing. So we're gonna go to the next phase of the webinar. We're gonna talk about challenges and how we can solve it. So that's now we're going to discussion portions. So I invite the attendee online to also submit questions. Let me just go back to the challenges slide that Rebecca have put together. So actually, we do have a questions from Karen. She has a question about Brazil. I'm not sure if Rebecca or Stefania can answer. Is there, if you can provide an update on the situation in Brazil, particularly with the rollout of the new digital identity system? I believe it's called the DNI card and the mobile app associated with it.
Okay, I think that I can answer that. Well, in Brazil, the story is particularly interesting because they have pushing this project years behind. Like, it's not a new thing. And it has been a really difficult effort because in Brazil, there is several identity cards. So what the government, I think it's at least 6 or 7 identity cards that any kind of citizen can use to identify themselves. So what the government is trying to do is to put in place this digital solution so that at least they can put together all the information that are divided in these different kind of cards in one single app. However, for what I have been informed, is still extremely challenging because of the number of population that lives in Brazil. One of the biggest efforts that Brazil has done is first with the birth certificate, that, as I mentioned before, is the breeder document. Most of their registries and birth certificates are already digitalized. One of the good things from this pandemic is that finally Brazilians can get their birth certificates online. Before, it was extremely difficult. So now that has been like an effort to at least digitalize a breeder document that will be included in this digital identity solution. However, I think that the questions that we should do on the Brazil solution is what services are going to allow to the Brazilians to be used. What services Brazilians are going to access with this digital ID solution? That is one question. And the second question is, what is going to happen with indigenous communities that live mainly on the Amazonas region, where they don't have internet connectivity? And in Brazil, that's a huge question, because if we see geographically, Brazil is extremely diverse. It's a huge country where the internet penetration is still limited. So my question I always make like this question: does this digital ID solution is going to work for everybody? We will have to see. It's a good effort, but we will have to see.
Definitely, we talk about that when we're preparing this webinar, right? The diversity questions beyond just people, it's different layer. You have an infrastructure question, dimensions aspect to it. Technology, right? Which technology you're gonna do to empower your registration. Biometrics is one of them, but there are other factors, and then security and so forth. So and then of course the populations and the geography of it, and the social economic structure of the country that have a lot of impact in creating an inclusive identity system. So I have Anna raise her hand. So Anna, would you like to speak, or you would like to submit a questions? You have your hand raised, so I can unmute you, I guess.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Anna. Yes.
Oh, hello. Well, actually, this is a great topic that is very close to my heart. I am originally from Guatemala, so and I worked in the OAS as an intern. So actually, it was very great to hear everything from you. I actually we just forgot the question, but I'll post it later. But just wanted to say it is very interesting. I've lived it myself, how hard it is to with communities that are very diverse. How do you access it? And how do you give identity to everybody, and how, and I think it's very important for communities to have access to this, especially for access to the government welfare. So sorry, I forgot my question, but I'll post it on the chat in a moment.
No problem. All right, and I have prepared some question, but since I have question coming online, I'm gonna address the attendee question first. So we have Debra Chamberlain from Service Identity. This question from her is: do most Latin American country that have a central identity system, either it's card, biometrics, also have a central authentication services for like web app or mobile app authentications? um, Rebecca or Stefania, do you guys know? Do you ladies know? Sorry, ladies knows if there is this parity between identity document, and this authentication services.
I guess that I will answer that again. Yes. Okay. So it depends on the maturity of the identity systems of each country. If the identity system is digital, if the country has a digital identity system, if all their files are digitalized, and this is very important, and if there is a legal framework that allows to the offices to verify and authenticate information, it is possible. So depending on the country, what is happening is that the identity offices that are managed by the government, they are the ones that own, not they own, but they manage the identity information of all the population. And then later, what they are doing is they are offering these verification and authentication services to third parties. It could be to any kind of agency on the government, and also to private or private sector, like for example, banks. In the best scenario, in some countries, what is happening is that, for example, if I need to take money from my bank account, the bank is going to ask for my full name, a unique identification number, and depending on the money that I'm going to take, they may ask for my biometric, my fingerprint. So what they do is that they only verify that information with the database of the government. It's like a yes and no check. That is in the best scenario, but in some other countries, what I have seen is that the governments just take the database and they give all the database to the agencies, and the agencies decided to put in place their own authentication procedures. So I guess that it will depend from country to country and on the majority of their identification systems and how the legal framework is being set.
I just wanted to add that it's important to know that in the case of Latin America, the one of the major clients for verification, authentication is really other entities, other public entities. So in some countries, obviously there is some funding that comes from verification when you are doing it for third parties like banks and other institutions, and that is good for the identity, for the civil registers, because that is money for their budgets that they don't get in any other way, right? But in many occasions, the infrastructures that this institution has for verification means, for example, there is one country in Central America where they have to do so many authentication for the government, for different entities, that they cannot run it during the day, because during the day they are using the database for registration and identification, and they don't have the option of doing both things at the same time. So during the night, they run all the verification for entities, for government entities. So that tells you a little bit about what are still challenges with the systems that the countries has. And if you think right now in the the COVID pandemic, a lot of the registration authorities has been working in verifying information for citizens that will get access to specific bonuses or support from different ministries or secretaries, depending on the country. But it has been very important, the role of authentication and verification of information to get this social support from citizens right now in the context of the pandemic.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I have actually quite a bit of chat going on here. So I'm going to go over some of the question and chat happening in the chat room as well. So great meetings. So ladies, we're doing great. We have a lot of compliment about these sessions, and a lot of people learn a lot. So thank you for your contributions. So Daniel had mentioned that you could use blockchain for identity apostles, or for using or you more and more using a digital wallet. But then there's a question about, of course, when it comes to digital, we talk about mobile phone. It kind of assumed that population has access to mobile devices. Um, so what's your thought of that? I think that's part of the, we talk about like the challenges of being inclusive. It's also dealing with the social economic differences of the populations as well. To have digital identity, you need a digital infrastructure and access to digital equipment, right? That's a definite challenge.
And I just want to say again, we were working with Stefania in putting together responses from the 18 countries to COVID. And one of the things that we found out, and that there was a gap between people that have already access to internet, to intelligent phones and all that, to get identification services through the platforms that some countries have, and the ones that don't, that are being affected by a pandemic. But at the same time, there is this huge gap with technology and internet access. So when we were talking with the countries, we understand, or they understand, the importance of all the investment that they did in the last few years to have these platforms and these services, but they know that not everybody can access those services. So they are thinking in how they are going to close that gap that is happening right now.
Yeah, I think that's why, we in this transition phase, very interesting in the identity space, is that we are thinking about the physical identity card and the identity document and the papers, and we just talk about the birth certificate. The first thing the AOS did was provide an issued birth certificate as the baseline foundation, and then build upon it. And I always tell people, digital identity, it's not an either or thing. Your physical identity and your digital identity go hand in hand. One needs the other. And it's not like you can choose one or the other. But I have a question from Julian. Julian. I'm trying to pronounce the name properly. Having a good civil identity system in Latin America, and therefore having a good way to authenticate identities, why do you think that Latin America countries still are collecting so many biometrics? That's an interesting questions. I'm not sure. I mean, ladies, if one of you want to take these questions.
I have thoughts on that.
So I think that there are different use cases, right? I mean, I think there are different use cases require different level of authentication and security, because you have a balance between privacy, data security, and to authenticate you is making sure you are who you are, and only you can access the right you are entitled to. And look at all the population we need to serve. I'm not, I always think that to be inclusive, with my background, is that you can't have just one kind of biometrics. A system needs to be inclusive. You need to serve multiple populations. And the advice we have been given is you should think about multiple biometrics, because you can not all one biometric can serve the entire populations, right? From that standpoint. But ladies, you guys have your perspective.
So I have also, like, I don't think that there is a right answer for what Julian just asked to us, but from my experience, I have seen that there is this need of security, that we want to be sure that you are the person that are saying that you are. And in this need, sometimes the entities that are asking for biometrics, they believe that by using biometrics is the only way to prove your identity. When it is not necessarily like that. Now there is a lot of options available that we can use to prove the identity of any person. So I guess that it's because probably there is a need of having these kind of conversations and asking to the region, like, what other available resources we have to keep providing, to keep proving identity, to keep providing safe transactions without using biometrics. Because what will happen if, for example, if I need to access to a cash transfer program by using my fingerprints and suddenly the system is shut off? That will mean that I'm not going to receive that service. So entities need to have like different ways to prove their identity in case that the system just disappears, or like Marianne said before, like if it's hacked, what we're going to do? Do we have certain options? So I guess that is one of the challenges that are still in the region, and are definitely discussions that are needed to be done, we need to keep supporting.
Yes. It's the same, when I learn about security 101, right? It's the chain of security. Your system is as strong as your weakest link, and therefore you need layers. You can't put everything in one single basket. You need to definitely design that system from a holistic view and have fail safe and business continuity plan to make a system work, right? It can't be just relying on this magic silver bullet. It doesn't exist. And it goes to the fact that there's so many factors that impact how well an identity system can function and serve the populations that it serves. So I see. I want to close because time flies. Like, I thought that we would have more time to discuss, but really we have great discussion. And ladies, you did a great job providing your insight and your highlight of what's going on in Latin America. Definitely, it's a very active region with identity system, and we always learn a lot how other countries do things in with identity in general. So I do want to close this as a couple takeaways. You guys can agree with me and maybe add on to it. The still challenge to be solved, right? It's identity and diversity. It's an ongoing challenge. It's ongoing effort, because identity change depending how the society function and evolve. The notion and concept of identity change, and therefore the need to have a policy discussion, right? And some country have more mature policy discussion than the other. I think OAS did a great job in setting that policy framework. And I think that first of all, the policy is important to put in place, and that's challenge number one. Challenge number two, interoperability between identity system. I heard from Brazil, there's like 7 kind of identity document out there, and how to consolidate them and make them interoperable. Data security, and then how to complement digital identity and physical identity, and of course the when we talk about diversity, there's many aspect and dimension to diversity. So ladies, your turn to do your closing statement for this webinar would be great. So Stefania, you want to give your closing statement?
Sure. Yeah, you just took me by surprise. So as my closing statement, okay, the region has been, as I mentioned before, has done an amazing job on providing legal identity mainly to vulnerable population. New challenges are coming. COVID also took us by surprise to the region. And as Rebecca said, right now we are working on our research on how COVID has been impact the right to a legal identity. But it's a region that also has a lot of lessons learned and a lot of best practices. So it is important and I think that for all of us that is in this panel to keep showing and disseminating the great experiences that the region has come. Legal identity is important for the region, allows to access to many services. And yeah, if you have any kind of question, please be free to contact me and I will be happy to share more of these great experiences and also lessons learned of the region. Thank you.
Thank you. We could do a series number 2. You ladies are always welcome back to Human Identity, and we're going to do a different webinar again. I think this is the starting point of a Latin America chapter of Women Identity. I've been hinting you ladies to start one, so hint again. Rebecca would like to.
Sure. Well, I second what Stefania just said. I think we as a region can still be the first region in the developing world to get to universal identity by 2030. I think we need to continue working with the countries and we need support. The region have a lot of good practices to share, especially for countries, for the developing world countries. And there is a very strong network of civil registrars and identity management authorities that is there to share the experiences of the region. So whoever wants to talk more about what we are doing, and if they want to know about one specific country, we are here to help with that in the Organization of American States. Thank you very much for inviting us, and I hope, as you said, that this is just the first step to creating something robust with women in identity in the region. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Rebecca. Marianne, the digital right, the budging topic. Any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna be like the counter view to myself, not to you. I agree with all of you, but like I always tell, technology. Well, I think that we have to be very aware, very wary of techno-solutionism. As addressing comments such as the use of biometrics and the use of blockchain. These might be good solutions in specific situations, but we can't replace our ability to identify someone. Like I think Stefania was saying, like you can't have it that you go to any particular service that you have to provide. And if the system is down, as often happens in Latin America, you can have it like, oh, no, we can't do anything. The oldest biometrics is that I see Stefania's face, and I know that's Stefania because I know her. And that's biometric at its basic level, like the ability to recognize a face, or any bio data. And so I always quote this study when talking about algorithms and that kind of thing. There was a place in the United States, I can't remember even if I quote it very often, but I can't remember where, but they were doing this thing that you had an app in your phone and you had your phone with you and you were driving through the city, and when your car hit a pothole, then the movement was detected by the phone and the phone sent an alert to the council, and then the mayor knew that they had to fix potholes in a certain place of the city. What happened was that the places where the streets were fixed were places where people had smartphones and better internet access, because those phones were able to install that app, and it required a certain version of Android or whatever, and also they were able to upload that information. And so I think we need to be very human-centered when designing these kind of policies, because we are talking about a very basic human right, and this is basically the ability to exist as a human in the society. So yes, technology can be very useful, but as Teresa very well said, it can only be one of the layers of what we aim to construct.
Yes, thank you, Marianne. I think your personal experience kind of speak a lot onto that, the negative side of it when the system is with no policy and no framework and no accountability. It can definitely, like everything, right, it can get led to abuse and the misuse, and that's an aspect of the challenges we have. So we are a little bit over. Thank you so much for your closing thoughts and spend and invest time to put this webinar together. I definitely learned a lot myself. I have really enjoyed this webinar together, and so thank you so much for all of your contributions and the attendee that have participated. So the webinar will be it's recorded and Caitlin, our IT expert of woman identity, will put this on YouTube, and we will definitely continue communicate and share the next informations we have. So, ladies, I hope we can do this again next year, maybe another topics together and talk about Latin Americas again. So, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day.